It was a busy day on the trail. Hikers everywhere. Adults talking, children laughing. The kind of place where danger doesn't feel possible. This wasn't deep wilderness. This was a popular hiking path in broad daylight with people just steps away from each other. 3-year-old Jaryd Atadero was right there, walking with the group. Adults nearby. His sister close. Nothing unusual. And then, he ran ahead. Not far. Not long. Just a few seconds. Long enough for a small child to disappear from view. When the adults looked up again, Jaryd was gone. No sound of footsteps running away. No struggle. No one shouting for help. Just an empty stretch of trail where a child had been moments before. In a place full of people, a child vanished. No one saw him leave. No one saw him taken. Jaryd Atadero was 3 years old. The age where the world feels safe, where curiosity is stronger than fear. He was energetic, always moving, always exploring. The kind of child who ran toward things, not away from them. Nature didn't intimidate him, it excited him. Trees weren't obstacles, trails weren't boundaries, they were invitations. He loved asking questions, loved animals, loved being outdoors. And most of all, he loved staying close to his older sister, Jocelyn. She was his anchor, his familiar face in a big world. Jaryd trusted the adults around him because he'd been taught to. He trusted the trail because everyone else did. He trusted the day because nothing bad had ever happened before. There was no sense of danger in his mind, no instinct telling him to stop, no understanding of how fast safety can disappear. He wasn't breaking rules. He wasn't running away. He wasn't being careless. He was doing what 3-year-olds do. He wasn't reckless. He was just 3. Jaryd wasn't alone on that trail. He was part of a group, 11 adults, all familiar with one another. A Christian singles network. People who trusted each other by default. There was no headcount system. No assigned supervision. No moment where someone clearly said, "He's with me." Instead, responsibility drifted. Jaryd walked near the front for a while, then closer to the middle, sometimes just ahead. Each adult assumed the same thing. Someone else was watching him. In groups, danger doesn't arrive loudly. It arrives quietly, through assumptions. No one meant to look away. No one made a decision to leave him unguarded. It happened in fragments, in seconds, in gaps between attention. One person thought he was with his sister. Another thought he was just ahead. Another believed he was with the group behind. And for a brief moment, he was with no one. That's how children disappear in plain sight, not through neglect, through diffusion. Everyone thought someone else was watching. For investigators, this moment matters more than anything else, because this is the last time Jaryd Atadero is confirmed alive. Ahead on the trail, 2 fishermen stood near the path. They noticed the small boy immediately, not because he was distressed, but because he was so calm. Jaryd approached them confidently. No fear, no panic, no hesitation. He asked a simple question. Were there bears around here? It wasn't the question of a frightened child. It was curiosity, the kind only a 3-year-old has, the kind that assumes adults will keep the world safe. The fishermen answered him. They watched him turn and continue walking. Jaryd moved toward the second campsite, following the trail naturally, the way a child follows a path without understanding where it leads. What's important is what wasn't seen. He wasn't crying. He wasn't running. He wasn't being chased or pulled. To the fishermen, everything looked normal. They assumed he belonged to the nearby group of adults further down the trail, and in that assumption, no alarm was raised. Minutes passed. No one realized they had just witnessed the final peaceful moment of a child's life. That was the last confirmed moment of his life. It happened suddenly. Somewhere ahead on the trail, a scream cut through the trees. Jaryd's sister, Jocelyn, heard it first. This wasn't laughter. It wasn't a child playing or shouting for fun. She would later describe it as wrong. A sound filled with fear, not excitement. For a brief moment, no one reacted. In the wilderness, sounds travel strangely. Children yell, wind echoes, birds scatter. But Jocelyn knew the difference. The scream didn't repeat. There was no follow-up cry, no footsteps, no voice calling his name. Just silence. That silence is what changed everything. Adults began looking around, calling out. At first, casually, then louder, then urgently. They scanned the trail ahead, behind them, into the trees. Jaryd was gone, not slowly missing, not wandered off over time. Gone between one moment and the next. The time window collapsed from minutes to seconds. Whatever happened to him occurred, fast enough that no one nearby could stop it, or even see it. Panic spread through the group as reality set in. This wasn't a child lagging behind. This was something else. After the scream, there was nothing. Once Jaryd was confirmed missing, the response escalated fast. This wasn't a casual look down the trail. This became a full-scale search and rescue operation. Dozens of trained volunteers flooded the area. Search dogs were deployed, noses low to the ground, tracing every possible scent. Helicopters lifted into the air, sweeping the mountainside from above. Dive teams checked the river below, moving methodically through freezing water. The terrain was mapped and remapped. Trails were walked again and again. Ravines, cliffs, campsites, and riverbanks were searched inch by inch. This was wilderness, but it wasn't endless. And Jaryd was only 3 years old. He couldn't have gone far on his own. He couldn't have climbed steep slopes. He couldn't have hidden. Deliberately, statistically, he should have been found. A footprint, a piece of clothing, a disturbed patch of dirt. But there was nothing. No tracks leading away from the trail. No scent trail for the dogs to follow. No evidence that he fell, drowned, or wandered off. As hours turned into days, confidence turned into confusion. Searchers began asking the unspoken question: how does a child vanish from a crowded trail without leaving a single trace? The mountain gave no answers. The forest kept its silence. It was as if Jaryd hadn't disappeared, as if he had been removed. It was as if the mountain erased him. When the search produced nothing, the theories moved in. At first, the most obvious explanation took hold. Jaryd got lost. Children wander. Trails twist. A wrong turn can become fatal. But this theory collapsed fast. Jaryd was last seen on a well-traveled path, with adults nearby. Search teams covered every direction a 3-year-old could realistically walk. There were no tracks, leading away from the trail. No signs he kept moving deeper into the forest. Then came the fall theory. Perhaps he slipped. Maybe he tumbled into a ravine or the river. But again, nothing. No disturbed earth, no marks on rocks, no evidence in the water below. If a fall had happened, it should have left a trace. Next, people whispered the word no one wanted to say out loud: abduction. Could someone have taken him? It sounded extreme, until the alternatives failed. A crowded trail doesn't stop a determined person, and a child trusting adults wouldn't scream or fight the way an older child might. Still, there were no witnesses, no sightings, no vehicles seen speeding away. Then there was the animal theory. Mountain lions live in this area. They are silent. They are fast. But even that explanation broke apart under scrutiny. Predator attacks leave signs, tracks, blood, drag marks. Search teams found none. Each theory seemed possible at first glance. Each one explained part of the puzzle. and each one fell apart under pressure. The case wasn't narrowing, it was fracturing. Every theory worked until it didn't. After the search ended, the noise faded. Helicopters disappeared from the sky. Search dogs went home. News vans packed up and left the trailhead behind. And just like that, the case went quiet. Weeks turned into months, months into years. For Jaryd's family, time didn't heal anything. It only stretched the pain. Birthdays came and went. Holidays passed with an empty space no one could fill. His sister grew older, carrying memories that never got answers. His parents were left with questions no one could solve. Public attention slowly drifted away. New stories replaced old ones. People began to say what they always say when answers don't come. He must have died out there. The wilderness took him. It happens sometimes. It was easier to believe that than to imagine something worse. The mountains stayed the same. The trail stayed open. Hikers continued walking past the exact place where a child vanished. No memorial marked the spot. No sign warned anyone. Just silence. And silence has a way of rewriting truth. Eventually, the case was no longer discussed as a mystery, but as a tragedy with an assumed ending. A lost child, a harsh wilderness, an unavoidable fate. Until years later, someone stepped off the trail and found something that should never have been there. Until something impossible was found. Nearly 4 years after Jaryd vanished, the mountain spoke again. 2 hikers stepped off the Big South Trail, just slightly, into terrain most people never touch. Steep, rocky, dangerous. That's when they saw it. A small shoe, then another, not buried, not destroyed, just lying there. Nearby, they found a child-sized jacket, and then pants, turned inside out. These weren't scraps torn apart by time. They weren't shredded. They weren't scattered the way you'd expect after years in the wilderness. And the location made no sense. The clothes were found over 500 feet above the trail, near the last place Jaryd had been seen alive. This wasn't a path a 3-year-old could climb. Not accidentally, not deliberately. Experienced hikers struggled to reach the spot. There were no drag marks, no blood, no animal hair. Just clothing, placed where logic failed. The discovery reopened everything. If Jaryd had been lost, how did his clothes get there? If an animal took him, why was there no evidence? If he wandered, how did he reach a place grown adults feared? Every assumption collapsed. What was once believed to be a simple tragedy now felt calculated, deliberate, wrong. The wilderness hadn't erased him. It had hidden something. A place no child should ever reach. After the clothes were found, search teams went back, this time higher, much higher, nearly 900 feet above the main trail, in terrain so steep it bordered on inaccessible. Searchers made another discovery, a small skull fragment, then a tooth. There was no doubt what they belonged to. DNA testing confirmed it. Jaryd Atadero had been found, but the relief didn't last, because the remains answered nothing. There were no clear injuries that could explain how he died, no definitive signs of an animal attack, no trauma that pointed to a fall, no evidence that explained movement up the mountain. The medical examiner could only give one conclusion: cause of death, undetermined. Even more troubling, there were no marks that clearly indicated how Jaryd reached that elevation in the first place. If an animal carried him, why was there no evidence on the clothing? If he climbed, how did a 3-year-old reach a place trained hikers struggled to access? If someone carried him, why leave remains scattered years later? The mountain had returned part of him, but not the truth. Closure was expected. Instead, the case reopened with more questions than it ever had before. Finding Jaryd didn't solve the mystery. it made it heavier. They found him, but learned nothing. Once the remains were identified, investigators expected the evidence to finally make sense. It didn't. First, the clothes. They were tested repeatedly. No blood, no animal saliva, no mountain lion hair, no DNA, human or animal. For a case so often explained away as a predator attack, the absence of forensic evidence was alarming. Then there were the shoes. After years exposed to harsh mountain weather, snow, rain, freezing temperatures, they were still largely intact. Minimal wear, no tearing, no drag marks. If Jaryd had been chased, fought, or carried, his shoes should have shown it. They didn't. The placement of the clothing raised even more questions. The items weren't scattered chaotically, as you'd expect from an animal struggle. They weren't buried. They weren't torn apart. They were found in a way that felt deliberate, as if they had been placed. And then there was the location. 500 vertical feet above the trail. In terrain even experienced hikers avoid. There were no signs Jaryd had climbed, no scrapes, no disturbed vegetation, no trail of movement. Every explanation, animal attack, fall, exposure, collapsed under scrutiny. Nature is violent. Nature is messy. This wasn't. Whatever happened to Jaryd didn't leave the marks investigators expected, and that absence became the loudest clue of all. Nature didn't explain this. From the beginning, one explanation kept resurfacing. A mountain lion. Colorado's wilderness is home to them. They're silent, fast, capable of killing in seconds. On the surface, it sounded reasonable. But when wildlife experts looked closer, doubts appeared. Mountain lion attacks follow patterns. They go for the neck or skull. They leave puncture wounds. They leave evidence, hair, saliva, blood. None of that was found on Jaryd's clothing. Experts also questioned the location of the remains. Mountain lions usually cache prey in concealed areas, under brush or dirt, not carry a small child hundreds of feet uphill across exposed rocky terrain. And then there was the clothing. Predators don't remove clothes. They shred them. They tear through fabric while feeding. Jaryd's clothes weren't shredded. They weren't bloodied. They were intact. Because of these contradictions, authorities never fully committed to the theory. Instead, they used careful language. Possible. Likely. Consistent with. Words that sound like answers, but stop short of proof. For the family, that distinction mattered. Possible meant no certainty, no reconstruction, no accountability, and no explanation for what really happened in those missing moments on the trail. Possible doesn't mean proven. There is one possibility investigators never fully embraced, but never ruled out. Human involvement. Not because there was proof, but because there was opportunity. Jaryd vanished on a busy trail, yet for a brief window, he was alone. No fences, no cameras, no clear lines of sight. Just seconds. The wilderness creates a dangerous illusion that it's empty. In reality, it offers something else: cover. A person wouldn't need strength or speed, just timing. And unlike an animal, a human leaves behind uncertainty instead of patterns. No tracks that make sense, no feeding behavior, no predictable outcome. That's the hardest part. There was no scream that led to an answer. No witness who saw something clearly enough to stop it. No evidence strong enough to confirm or dismiss the idea. Which leaves the family in a place far worse than knowing. Not grief alone, but doubt. Because if it wasn't nature, then it was choice. And the wilderness didn't take Jaryd. It hid what someone else did. Sometimes the scariest answer is the quiet one. When the search teams left the mountain, Jaryd Atadero never really did. For the world, time moved on. For Alan, it stopped. He replayed that day endlessly, every decision, every assumption, every moment when someone believed Jaryd was being watched by someone else. Guilt didn't come from certainty. It came from not knowing. When Jaryd's remains were finally found years later, they brought answers only on paper. A name, a confirmation, not an explanation. Alan chose to keep what little was returned to him, not out of denial, but closeness. It wasn't macabre to him, it was all he had left. Faith became both refuge and burden. Some days it helped him stand. Other days, it raised the same questions science couldn't answer. Why there? Why then? Why a child? He spoke openly about the doubt, about how grief doesn't fade when the case goes cold. It just settles into daily life, quiet and permanent. There were no arrests to blame, no verdict to lean on, no ending to accept. Only a father learning how to live in a world where his son never came home. Closure never came. Even after years of searching, analysis, and official conclusions, the most important questions in Jaryd Atadero's case remain unanswered. Why was there a scream? Children scream when they're frightened, not when they're lost. That sound lasted only moments, but it marked a point where something changed fast. Why that location? Jaryd's clothes and remains were found in places that challenge logic, areas steep, remote, and difficult even for experienced hikers. Places no 3-year-old should have been able to reach on his own. Why was there no trace, no blood, no animal DNA, no clear trail? In a wilderness known for leaving evidence behind, the mountain stayed silent. And why daylight? This didn't happen in the dark. It didn't happen in isolation. People were nearby. The trail was active. Whatever happened occurred in the open, yet somehow unseen. Each question pulls against the others, and every explanation solves one problem, while creating 3 more. Officially, the case has an answer, but emotionally, it doesn't. Someone knows what happened. So what really happened to Jaryd Atadero? Was he simply lost, a child who wandered too far, too fast, into terrain that gave him no second chance? Was he taken by someone who knew the wilderness would hide the truth better than any locked door ever could? Was it an animal, a rare, silent encounter that left almost no trace behind? Or was it human, the possibility no one wants to accept because it means this didn't just happen, it was done? Every theory explains one part of the story. None explain all of it. The scream, the distance, the clothes, the silence. Decades later, the mountain hasn't answered, and neither has anyone else. If Jaryd didn't just get lost, where did he really go?